Okay, moving on to the last and final segment of today's show, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Houston Rockets and not only their Game 7 win over the Oklahoma City Thunder the other night, but also preview a little bit their second round series, that starts up tonight against LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and the Los Angeles Lakers. And I'll say this. We all expected the Houston Rockets to win Game 7. Or I shouldn't even say expect, but we all said that going into that game, there is absolutely zero reason why the Houston Rockets should lose this game. And yeah, the reason why we said that was because overall, they're just the more talented team. And they went all out and throw all their chips in on the small ball mentality. And if they would have lost this game to the Oklahoma City Thunder, I think we're all talking about this morning we're talking about the fact that the Houston Rockets have some decisions to make. Are they going to want to file Daryl Morey? What are they going to do with the future of Russell Westbrook? What are they going to do regarding the future of James Harden? And could they bring in another coach, not named Mike D'Antoni, that could adapt to having James Harden as his best player and the specific system that it requires to coach James Harden? It would have been very fascinating this morning to have those kind of conversations. But the Houston Rockets ended up getting the victory by a final score of 104-102. And I think there are a couple different things to talk about in this game. Number one, I wanted to give a big shout out to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Chris Paul had a great season. Steven Adams, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Danilo Gallinari, guys like Lou Dort stepping up and dropping 30 points. The rookie from Arizona State. If it wasn't for him, Oklahoma City would never have even had a chance to win this game. So a big shout out to him. And I'll admit it, going into this season, I really was doubtful on what Billy Donovan was as an NBA coach. I was really doubtful on what Chris Paul still had left. And I was doubtful if he would be able to show anything of any magnitude in terms of how he could adapt working with this Oklahoma City Thunder squad that the season prior, they looked stale playing with Russell Westbrook and Paul George. As good as those players are, you never really thought Oklahoma City had a chance to win a championship with not only those guys, but some of the other surrounding pieces. And Chris Paul came in right away, along with Gallinari, along with Gilgeous-Alexander, and a bunch of draft picks that they have coming into their franchise. And I think the future is real bright for Oklahoma City. If I was them, I would even consider running this whole thing back. I'm serious. The Thunder, bravo on a great season. I actually picked the Oklahoma City Thunder to win this series before it started against the Rockets. And the reason for that was just because I thought they were the more consistent team, especially in crunch time. I remember going into this Game 7, a common theme that a lot of us said was if it is tied at like 100 with 6 minutes to go, I think you're going to feel more confident in Chris Paul and his ability to make tough shots down the stretch than James Harden. That's basically the exact situation and scenario that ended up taking place in the back end of Game 6 and in Game 7 with about 6 minutes left. If you're a Houston Rocket fan, you're lying if you're telling me you weren't nervous when you saw that scoreboard tied at 100. And the even crazier thing is that Lou Dort dropped 30 points for Oklahoma City. He goes 6 of 12 from 3, 10 of 21 from the floor. And oh yeah, James Harden, the guy that we've ripped constantly and rightfully so for his past and prior performances in Game 7s. Yeah, did he make the game-winning defensive stop on Lou Dort? Yeah, he did, and he deserves some credit for that. But I don't want anyone saying the narrative is done that he could get the job done in a big spot in the playoffs, because last 2 nights ago against the Oklahoma City Thunder, look at his final stat line: 4 of 15 from the field, 1 of 9 from 3, 8 of his 17 points from the free throw line. Yeah, did he save the game for his team playing great defense? Absolutely. But the Houston Rockets were very, very close from a loss that could have sent their franchise back a long way. And many people before the playoffs started during the break of the pandemic, including myself, actually said, If the Houston Rockets and Los Angeles Lakers end up matching up in the NBA playoffs, could the Houston Rockets ever have a realistic chance of beating them? And now, what do we know? We're going to be seeing the Houston Rockets and the LA Lakers play in the playoffs. And here's my thing. As much as I would love to see Russell Westbrook get over the narrative that he can't play anymore, and his playoff performances of the past, and same with James Harden. And we know the last time these two guys faced off against LeBron James in a playoff series, it was 9 years ago when LeBron was out here winning his first ring, and we all remember how special of a Miami Heat team that was. And I'll say one thing about the current version of the Los Angeles Lakers: it's not that Miami Heat team. But at the same time, as much as I want to say the Houston Rockets, and as they played impressive defense in games 1 and 2 against the Oklahoma City Thunder, and there is the only chance the Rockets have of beating the Lakers is if their defense really steps it up, and they just get ridiculously hot from 3, and somehow, some way, Daryl Morey's small ball philosophy ends up showing that it really does work. But at the same time, if James Harden can perform in clutch time offensively down the stretch against the Oklahoma City Thunder, I don't see any way he's knocking the Los Angeles Lakers out of the playoffs. And I know I'm the same guy that said multiple times on this show that the Los Angeles Lakers are just not a very good basketball team besides LeBron and Anthony Davis. And I still do believe in that. And I think Robert Covington and PJ Tucker and maybe even Eric Gordon, maybe even Daniel House, Jeff Green will do his best to try to keep the Houston Rockets in this series. But my official prediction for this series is that the Los Angeles Lakers are going to win in 6. I think LeBron and AD are going to overwhelm the Rockets' small ball philosophy with their athleticism. I think LeBron and AD both just go off. I don't really expect any other players to step up consistently for the Lakers in this series, and I just have a hard time believing that James Harden and Russell Westbrook and company could knock LeBron and AD out of the playoff series, especially when you consider the fact that we just saw the Houston Rockets play in a 7-game playoff series against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I started off this segment of the podcast talking about how much credit Chris Paul and Billy Donovan deserve for the season the Oklahoma City Thunder had, and I totally understand that. But at the same time, that Oklahoma City Thunder team deserves credit because in the preseason, no one really expected them to be good. People expected the Rockets to be good in the preseason. People expected the Rockets to be good now. And oh yeah, they traded their starting point guard, Chris Paul, to OKC for their current point guard, Russell Westbrook. If they would have lost to OKC, they would have been embarrassed and would have also been left with just a bunch of unanswered questions. When you look at the Rockets now going up against the Los Angeles Lakers, if they had that hard of a time beating Oklahoma City in 7 games, I have a hard time believing that they have the ability to beat the Lakers. But it's the NBA playoffs. Things could get weird. You never know. So my official prediction, once again, is the Lakers in 6. And that will do it for this episode of the Zach Kroll Sports Podcast. It's been a long one today. Hope you enjoyed it.